Hi, I'm Sister Unity, and I want to talk to you about the United States. We are a democracy. Our founding fathers wanted the demos, the people, to be the top of the consideration and hierarchy of how the country was organized. They believed in we, the people, the demos being the Greek word that means the people. So democracy means rule by the people. Not a monarchy where one person rules, not an oligarchy where a few people rule, not a theocracy where it's a religion, set of religious rules that rule, but democracy, where all the people who live in the country have the say of the run of the country. There have been arguments, you run into people who say, well, we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. It's clever semantics. A constitutional republic is a type of democracy. A republic is a country that is set up by and run by the vote and the will of the people. Republics are democracies. A constitutional republic is a republic that has a written document that sets out the rules and guidelines for how that country is run by the people. So we're a constitutional republic, which is a kind of democracy. The Founding Fathers, there's arguments about how they were Christian or they were not Christian. It seems to me that they may have practiced a Christian faith, but that they did not intend the country to be run by Christian laws, or the Constitution would have Christianity by name and the Bible written through it, and it does not. That's not to say there's anything wrong with being Christian, just like there's nothing wrong with being any particular religious belief or practice, or none at all. The Founding Fathers wanted to create a place where all people could live the lives that they believed in, as long as it didn't harm their neighbors, free with liberty and justice, that's the part where it doesn't harm your neighbors, for all. The thing is about this idea that it's run by the people, it's hard to keep it. It's hard to follow it. It's hard to keep doing it. That's why when the Constitution had been ratified and the Continental Congress or the government had put it together and the delegates had stepped out of their final meeting creating the country, and someone asked Benjamin Franklin, well, what have we got? And he is said to have remarked, a republic, if you can keep it. He knew the way of the world. He was a very wise man. And he knew that having something run by a mass of independently willed, unruly, differing in opinions people, it was going to be a tricky thing. Our mechanisms, our checks and balances, are the way that we vote and have our representatives selected by this crazy mass of people that is us, does work, has worked for 240 years, but, as we have learned in recent years, it takes vigilance, trust, and support. There are cynics who would have us believe that it doesn't matter so much, that we can just leave it aside to smarter people or people who are more committed, just trust in those couple of people to take it over for us, do it for us, or that the government is separate from the people and that the government is some overpowering entity like a king who is doing to us, and that we should be free from the government doing things to us and should take that control for ourselves. But the thing that that philosophy forgets is that the United States government is a representative government. The people vote for the representatives, and the representatives do the will of the people, or they don't get elected again. the government is not different from the people. The government is the expression of us, of the people. The government is the mechanism and the vehicle by which we, the people, run our own affairs. And every 2 years for the House of Representatives, or 6 years for the Senate, or 4 years for the president, we say, hey, there's a bunch of you, I like you. It seems to me like you're going to do the things that matter to me to get done in government, so please you go to Washington and do those things. And if you don't do them, then we're going to talk about that at the next election. So all the people in Washington, we sent them there. And yes, there's career diplomats and career people working in the IRS and Social Security and Medicaid and all the departments of the government, and yes, they stay there, but those people are picked and vetted by the people that we voted on and the people that those people vet and select. It's worked pretty well for 240 years. More or less, there are always things that people like and don't like, and that swings back and forth. It is messy and is turbulent, but it has worked for 240 years. And yet, we find people today that are trying to get us to look at it with dismay, that are trying to get us to dismantle it and leave control in the hands of a few people who, in my opinion, know how to make it work for themselves and know how to make it work so that they can earn some extra money themselves. Well, what do we do about that? We, the people, run this country. We've got to express our will. That means you have to vote. You really do. If you believe in this idea of the people having control over their own lives, you have to vote, because that's how we run our lives. But you also cannot rest on voting alone. You cannot trust that, say someone had taken over your government, say a foreign government had selected people that they, puppets, people who are American, but worked for that foreign government, and they got them into power somehow. You can't just sort of say, oh, well, the election, we'll get rid of them during the election. Because we've learned over the 20th century that elections can be influenced. They can be influenced by a lot of money. They can be influenced by a lot of media. And we've seen that happen. So we need to combat that. We need to counteract that. How do we unrig elections? How do we make sure elections are free and fair and determined by all the people, the vote of all the people? You organize. The way you do it is you organize. You can't just say, oh, it's this whole country, it's at the national level. The only way I have to affect that is to vote or maybe call my representative. You do those things, but you also organize locally where you are. Put together committees, which is really just a group of you and your neighbors, and decide on your intention. Are you going to create a group of people that are looking for ways to say, this is wrong and broken in our country and it needs to be fixed. Here's how we think it should be fixed. Will you speak to the media? Will you have protests? Will you run campaigns on social media? Will you make signs and stand on the street to make people aware? Will you run education programs? In the 60s, they used to have teach-ins and sit-ins in which they would disseminate information that was necessary for the people. This is wrong, this is how you fix it. We believe in this, it's different than what the government is doing, let's change that. There are a lot of ways, if you come together with your neighbors or your community and you brainstorm ideas for ways to create change. 3 heads are better than 1. 6 heads are better than 3. Get together and talk about what you'd like to do to stand up and make sure that the voice of you, the people, is being heard and that information that's important to all of us is being shared. Are you in a place that you feel has been gerrymandered? Get together with groups of people and find out how you can change that. What do you need to do to get your state legislature to arrange districts that are free and fair? Can you have call the ACLU? Get a lawsuit going. Can you bring a lawsuit yourselves? Create a non-profit organization called Citizens for Responsible Districting. All of this is possible using the legal instruments available to you if you organize and brainstorm with people in your community locally. And then you can build networks between organizations so that you build a larger organization. You see how that works? That's how the parties originally got themselves built. But it does take sacrifice. We are going to need to sacrifice our time. We're going to need to sacrifice our effort, put out effort. We're going to need to do work. We're going to need to speak up. We're going to need to hold education seminars, lectures, classes, demonstrations. We're going to need to make pamphlets. We're going to need to tell people what they don't know. It's not enough to just get in arguments on Twitter. You need to provide credible sources with credible information that people can consider, so they see a viewpoint that helps them support our democracy. The most important thing that we the people can do for self-governance is to remind each other that we do not lay back and let some other entity tell us what to do. We use the instruments that our forefathers created for us, and we use them to determine what government we want set up in our name to do our work. Make sure that people understand that government belongs to them and that they have the right and the power to determine what that government is made of who is part of it. If you're confused by this, if this seems overwhelming, if it seems like a too big a job, then just start by talking to people and asking yourselves this question: what can we do to organize better for ourselves and our voice in our government? Excuse me. Sometimes you need to expel things. Is there anything in our government now that needs to be expelled? Ask yourselves this, and then ask yourselves how you can organize to get that done. That's the root of democracy. When you hear them talk about a grassroots movement, that's what it means. It means you coming together with your local community members and brainstorming things that you guys can do to have an effect on the way things are run in your area, which will in turn affect the way things are run nationally. Let's talk about this, and let's start getting things done, because saving our democracy for us the people, for we the people, is not only important for our lives, but for the children. We want to leave them a better country than we had ourselves.